how it is the tool with which they are going to try to pacify us and turn us into what H.G. Wells called the Eloi. Remember that at the very end of the book? They go forward into the future, and they see these little pink Jigglypuff things, and there's a cooing and all this kind of stuff. That's, in his mind, what humanity devolved into. But then there were these dark creatures that came up from underground. They were the Morlocks. And he realized that, first he thought, the Eloi were in charge of everything. They were so... they were kind of taken care of and everything, but he realized that they were simply the food source for the Morlocks. And so we're going to talk about the Precariat, who they're going to try to turn into Eloi. That's probably you, or will be you, pretty soon, because 95% of the people they're planning on in the next decade or so are going to lose their jobs to these disruptive technologies. Now, before we go back to the news, I just want to mention briefly that we do have Living Defense back in stock at InfoWarsLife.com. This is something that we came out with a single run of it. It sold out incredibly quickly. It's very difficult to manufacture to the high standards that we manufacture. So it took us a while to do another batch. Alex did a triple batch, and now it's about to sell out, but it is still back in stock. It's going very quickly. You can find out about it at InfoWarsLife.com. 9 out of 10 people are infested with human organisms. Once these organisms have made it inside your body, they steal your nutrients. They release toxic wastes. You can eliminate the toxic and harmful organisms from your body using Living Defense. Read the reviews. Read about it at InfoWarsLife.com. It is now back in stock and not for long. Let's go back to Hillary Clinton. Of course, I have this article I just mentioned about how there's some emails that they do not want to have escape. They're blocking these. They're blocking FOIA requests for these emails that would show Hillary Clinton's deep support for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which will destroy not only our economy, but our sovereignty. It'll destroy internet freedom. It'll destroy so many things. But we know that Obama is all in for this. And we know that one of the people that has been touted as a potential vice presidential candidate for Hillary Clinton, going back, the Castro brothers, we've talked about them from Texas, one of them a congressman, one of them the former mayor of San Antonio, both of them the spawn of one of the founders of the racist Hispanic organization, La Raza. Okay, that's what people need to understand with all this back and forth about Donald Trump. You want to talk about La Raza? What if I told you that I just joined a group for white males? I want to promote white males. I want to make sure there's more white males in higher positions. I want to give scholarships exclusively to white males. And the motto of this organization that I have joined for white males says everything for white males. If you're not a white male, you get nothing. What if I told you that was our motto for our organization? Would you say I was a white supremacist? Would you say I was a racist? You would be right if you did, okay? If I joined an organization like that. La Raza, the race. Their motto is everything for the race, nothing for those outside of the race. So don't tell me that this judge who is handing out scholarships to people on the basis of them being Hispanic and illegal immigrants is not biased against Donald Trump, okay? But these two Castro twins, one of whom is a congressman, one of whom is now currently a HUD secretary, used to be the mayor of San Antonio and wanted to try to get rid of the Alamo or completely reinvent it. He's been, the congressman, Castro, has been touring Vietnam with Obama, talking about how they wanted to push TPP. And Obama was on Jimmy Fallon last night, joking about the TPP and talking about how we don't need somebody who's not a serious candidate. You know, Donald Trump really isn't a serious candidate. He does all this reality TV stuff, and you can't take the guy seriously. He's just an entertainer. And then Obama does this to prove his point.
That being said, the American people face an important decision this fall. The entire world is watching, and they look to us for stability and leadership. Now, I know some of the presidential candidates have been critical of my foreign policy. I don't want to name any names.
Just talking about Donald Trump.
But I believe it is of the utmost importance to work alongside other world leaders. That's why I signed the Iran nuclear deal. That's why we reopened diplomatic ties with Cuba. And that's why I negotiated the new trade deal called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP.
Now hold on there, Press Dispenser. Are you saying you're down with TPP?
Yeah, you know me.
Oh, isn't that great? TPP is now really cool. And it's really cool to go on and talk about how this other guy is just an entertainer. But I'm serious, right? Okay, seriously? Okay. Now, besides the TPP, what else is Hillary unauthentic on? Of course, I want to play this for you. We mentioned it the other day. She came out in favor of building a wall and deporting people who came here illegally from Mexico. She said Mexico was pushing people on us. Let's play this clip of Hillary Clinton 10 years ago.
Mexico is such an important problem. Mexican government's policies are pushing migration north. There isn't any sensible approach except to do what we need to do simultaneously, secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary in some places, and we need to have tougher employer sanctions, and we need to try to incentivize Mexico to do more. If they've committed transgressions of whatever kind, they should be out.
Okay, physical barriers. We got to deport them. We got to have employer sanctions, and it's coming from the Mexican government who's pushing them on us. But she's not racist, is she? No, it's only racist when her opponent does it. And it's only a problem when their opponent does live television. But when they do it, they're serious. And they can make TPP sound cool because, it rhymes with so many different things. Don't pay any attention to what's in it, okay? They kept it secret for years and years. Now, but we're told that Hillary Clinton is the first woman to run for president. And as somebody called up and pointed out to us and said, no, we've had Green Party candidates who ran for it. We had Cynthia McKinney. We've also had Jill Stein. And there's been a whole slew, frankly, folks, of women who have run for presidency. Going back to 1872 was the first one. Victoria Woodhull. Women didn't even have the vote in 1872. But she ran for president back then. She was the first person to run for president. So they say, well, Hillary is the first major party candidate to run for president. Because, the other parties don't count. Why don't they count? Well, that would be because of what the Democrats and Republicans have done to our democracy to make sure that they have a duopoly, that they have a monopoly essentially on power, because it truly is a single party. And so we can talk about who the first woman was or whatever. Does it really matter? Do you know who the first left-handed candidate we had for president was? Or the first red-headed candidate for president? Does it matter? She likes to say, what difference does it make when you're talking about stranding people and leaving them to die at Benghazi? It doesn't make any difference. But it makes a difference when we talk about who the first woman president was. No, it doesn't. It doesn't make any more difference than the first left-handed person, quite frankly. What we need, and what I would like to celebrate, is maybe in my lifetime, the first candidate who takes individual liberty and the Constitution they swear to seriously. Now, that would be something to celebrate. I don't really care about your identity politics that you like to play here. And if you want to play that, we can play the trivia game. We had Libertarian Party candidate Tony Nathan was the VP. She was the first woman to get an electoral college vote. So what? Okay. Back in 1972, had a guy who was supposed to go vote for Nixon said, I just can't do it. And so he voted for the LP, and they got their first electoral college vote. But what's interesting about Woodhull is the fact that history doesn't repeat itself, but as we've said before, it certainly rhymes. And so I want you to take a look at some of the rhyming issues about Victoria Woodhull, the first woman who really did run for president, and how she lines up with Hillary Clinton, the first major party candidate to run for president. Okay, they're both feminists, both eugenicists, both support, and of course, Victoria Woodhull called it the free love idea. Okay, it's essentially an anti-family agenda. Let's destroy all the conventional norms about family and everything. She called it free love. That's Hillary Clinton with the LGBT movement. She was into occultic religion, spiritualist, follower of an Austrian mystic. Okay, wouldn't be surprised about Hillary. I don't know if she has any religion other than politics. But one of the other things that Victoria Woodhull may have in common with Hillary Clinton is that when she was running for president, she was indicted. How about that? The first woman to run for president was indicted while she was running for president. Now, unlike Hillary Clinton's she was, and her archenemy at the time, and here's another place where history repeats itself, okay? We have an evangelical, a big dog preacher, okay, if you want to call him that. This is a guy who was a very well-known abolitionist. And, of course, this is 1872. It was right after the Civil War. So he'd become very famous during the lead up to the Civil War. His name was Henry Ward Beecher, okay? He was a clergyman, and he was adamantly opposed to Victoria Woodhull and her free love, anti-family agenda. But he was also a prolific adulterer, a total hypocrite, which is another another thing that we continually see, another cookie cutter stereotype. These stereotypes exist because they really are true, folks. So we've got this guy who's a famous clergyman who is this incredible hypocrite. And so they're having this very public argument going back and forth about free love. It's one of the things that she supports as being a feminist. Then she finds out, as one of the many women that he was having an affair with confessed to her husband, that information was taken from her husband to Victoria Woodhull, who also owned the press. And I guess you could kind of say Hillary Clinton doesn't actually own a newspaper, but in a sense, she does own the press, doesn't she? The Clinton News Network, they are very, very friendly to her. She doesn't actually hold stock in them. She doesn't actually do the hiring and firing, but she does own the press to a large degree. Well, Victoria Woodhull actually had a newspaper that she ran as a business. And so this woman who had an affair with this hypocritical clergyman who was at war with Victoria Woodhull confessed to her husband. He went to Victoria Woodhull, and she published details of the affair. They arrested Victoria Woodhull, took her to trial, indicted her, and charged her with sending obscenities through the mail because they said, well, you have published obscene obscenities by talking about his affairs, and because you mailed your newspaper, we're going to get you for sending obscenity through the mail. I mean, you're talking about a stretch. That was a stretch. But anyway, she was eventually cleared. He was actually went on trial from being in a civil trial for charges of adultery. But the interesting thing about it, too, is that it completely took Reconstruction off of the headlines, just as we see today. They'll focus on the salacious details of celebrity sex. This was 1872. And completely miss one of the darkest chapters in our country's history, Reconstruction, which they didn't want to talk about anyway. Gave them a good excuse to get that off. So if you look at history, isn't it interesting how the stereotypes just continue to repeat themselves? Now, the other day I was talking about the precariat, one of the admitted topics by the Bilderbergers that I thought was kind of interesting. It was something that I didn't know about prior to that. I started doing research on it. And, of course, a book that was written in 2014 really helped to accelerate this. And so there was a lot of people talking about it in 2015, and now it's become a big deal. The end game of this, which I really didn't get to the other day, was the idea they're going to provide a universal basic income. This is unconditional welfare, folks. This is what's being proposed. And what's truly shocking when you look at this is not just that the Bilderbergers would be looking at this as an instrument of control, as they see things like the pushback and the rise of all of these anti-immigration parties, the people seeing what's being done to their currency and saying, we don't like what is happening with this consolidated government. So you have the rise of all these individual parties that they like to characterize as ultra-right-wing parties. And, of course, Donald Trump would be in that category. So how do we control this, I say? Well, this universal basic income. What I found that was really surprising was the fact that this is being supported by so many in the business community. Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, the American Enterprise Institute, the conservative/libertarian think tank that is funded by the Koch brothers. They're all pushing this socialist utopian idea of a universal basic income. Look at this story from Forbes. Universal basic income is not a crazy idea, they tell us. And again, it's unconditional monthly income. And we just had this last Sunday, the Swiss had a referendum. They said, we're going to give $31,000 to every adult in Switzerland without conditions. You can still have a job. You can do whatever you want to. That's just going to be a basic level of income. And if that was a 40-hour work week, that would work out to $16 an hour pay. So there's your $15 an hour pay that Bernie and Hillary are pushing, the socialists are pushing. But it's a little bit more than that. And you get that for doing nothing. He says the concept has been called utopian, irresponsible, socialist. Yeah, because it is. It is. It was rejected by 77% of the Swiss voters. But then he says last weekend, the Wall Street Journal published an